guys, I'm back with part 2 of Slime by David Williams, and we left off on chapter 3. Chapter 3, Gunk. Jemima was a child who revelled in all things yucky. Not just spiders and worms, but gooey things too. All around the little cottage where the family lived, the girl had hidden gunk in jars. Things you found under rocks, things you found at the bottom of ponds, things you found lurking down the plug hole. Jemima would scoop up anything nasty and deposit it in a jar. Over time, she had collected hundreds and hundreds of jars of all different kinds of gunk. Every single one had a label on it, so Jemima could remember what was what. One shudders to think how the girl collected some of these revolting things. You would not want to touch this stuff with your bare hands. Badger snot, slippery sludge, frog spawn, granny dribble, snail trail, jellyfish, foot cheese, pigeon poop, rotten eggs, toenail grot, old man's phlegm, underarm sweat, off custard, fur balls, stinging nettle juice, liquidized worms, gerbil whey, that weird yellow stuff that ladybirds leave on your finger, earwax, wet bottom burps, belly button fluff, very mouldy mould, spider sick, crushed caterpillars, bat eggs, slug juice, and something unspeakable that cannot be named. At the bottom of every wardrobe, at the back of every cupboard, under the floorboards, there were jars and jars and more jars. Jemima was stockpiling them in the family cottage, as she wanted to play the most humongous trick on her little brother. The trick that would make him scream the house down. A scream that would echo all over the Isle of Mulch forever. Jemima would snigger herself to sleep, thinking about her devilish plan. Tee-hee-hee. There was just one problem. Her little brother was onto her. Chapter 4, Bogies Under the Bed. Ned found the jars, just one jar at first. In a deep sleep, Ned had rolled off his bed in the thud of the night. Thud! Ouch! The fool woke him. Just as he was about to haul himself back up, Ned noticed something glinting in the darkness under his bed. He reached out and found it was a jar. The label in his sister's scrawled handwriting read simply, Bogies. On closer inspection, he discovered it really was a jar bursting with bogies. They looked very much like Jemima's. She had picked, licked and flicked so many at Ned over the years that he could recognise them in any lineup in an instant. Hers were always a brownish shade of green. At once, Ned knew his wicked sister was up to something. But why had she hidden her own bogies in a jar under his bed? Lifting up the sheets, he saw that this was just one of what must have been 100 jars under there. Each contained something more disgusting than the last. Ned's eyes bulged as he read the labels. Ground ants, boiled dandruff, yellow pus, yellowy brown pus, browny yellow pus, slobber, sludge found down the plug hole after a bath, cheesy burps, meaty burps, spicy burps, burpy burps, monkey sweat, wart soup, toad juice, 10-year-old trifle that has gone so fizzy it will blow your head off, puddle, gunge or punge, and something even more unspeakable than the other unspeakable thing that cannot be named. One by one, Ned pulled all the jars out from under his bed. He was careful not to clink them together. The sound would wake up his wicked sister, who was sleeping in her room next door. Then Ned hoisted himself up onto his battered old wheelchair so he could go hunting for more jars. One good thing about getting around on wheels is that you can glide silently and undetected, as long as you don't bump into the furniture, donk, or run over a cat, meow. Ned rolled past his sister's bedroom and headed into the living room. Now, thought Ned, where would be a good hiding place? It turned out everywhere. There were jars and jars and more jars of yucktastic stuff hidden all over the room. Behind the curtains, under the sofa, on top of the bookshelf, in the sideboard, under the cushions, behind the plant pot, inside the lampshade, under the coffee table. The same was true of the kitchen and the hallway. Rolling past the boiler cupboard, Ned heard gurgling. Gurgle, furgle, durgle. On opening the door, he could just see jars and jars with gunk oozing out of them. The heat from the boiler must have made the gunk expand. It was a wonder that one of the jars hadn't exploded. Once again, all the jars were labelled, each full of something more puzzling than the last. What was all this stuff? Plume, gronge, spludge, foddle, muppety, winkadink, hunnaha, fonk, boo-boo, knottle, woolly bumps, dunty punt, snud, miggle, piffle paffle, zonty monty woo-wah, plutz plutz, bim bam booly. And more importantly, what was she planning to do with it all? The boy approached his mother and father's room. He peeked through the gaps in the door. Their bed was empty. It was early hours of the morning and the pair were already at work. No doubt Dad was heading out to sea and Mum was setting up her market stall. A quick search by Ned of the back of their wardrobe revealed jars, jars and more jars. Curiouser and curiouser, he muttered to himself. Then the boy rolled back into the hall, making his way towards his dreaded sister's bedroom. Trundle, trundle, trundle. Ned was sure somewhere in there would be the answer. He put his ear up against her door. Zzz. Jemima was fast asleep, snoring like a steam train. The sign on her bedroom door read, "Entry strictly forbidden. Any unauthorised persons who go beyond this point will get a boot up the bottom." Now was Ned's chance. The boy took a deep breath. Then, as quietly as he could, he opened the door. Click. And gently rolled himself inside. Trundle. The boy hadn't been allowed in his sister's bedroom for years. No wonder she kept everyone out. Her room was full to bursting with jars and jars and more jars of gunk. There must have been thousands upon thousands of jars in there, all the way from the floor to the ceiling. No wonder Jemima had resorted to hiding the jars all over the house because there was no more room in her bedroom. It was a miracle she could ever get in or out. As Ned watched his sister sleep, noticing that she wore her steel-capped boots in bed, he scanned her bedroom for clues. There must be an answer somewhere to what she's got planned to do with all these jars of gunk. In a corner of the room were Jemima's school exercise books. Ned knew that his sister never did a scrap of work at school, so was surprised to see how well thumbed the books looked. Upon opening them, Ned discovered that they weren't full of schoolwork at all. Oh no, they were full of plans for the diabolical tricks that she was to play on him. Chapter 5. The Bath of Doom. Ned's eyes widened at the horror, the unspeakable horror. The words and pictures in her books told the story in gruesome detail. So this was what his wicked sister was planning. There were lists, calendars, graphs, diagrams, and even a flick book of how it would all play out. It was called Ned's Birthday Surprise, and it was the boy's birthday tomorrow. Once a year on his birthday, Ned had a bath. In the family cottage, there was only enough hot water for a bathful a day. Of course, Jemima always bagsied every drop of hot water for herself. No wonder her parents reeked of fish. The only exception to this rule was on her little brother's birthday. On that special day, Jemima would be forced by her parents to relent and let her stinky little brother Ned have his yearly soak. So the plan was that tomorrow Jemima would fill the bath with gunk. Every last drop from every single jar would be emptied until the bath was full to the brim. Then she would squirt bubbles on top of the gunk so Ned wouldn't see the horror that was lurking underneath. The Bath of Doom. There was even a cutaway diagram in her exercise book showing the hidden layer of gunk. Jemima knew her little brother would suspect nothing. This was his birthday treat after all. Ned would think it was a lovely bath full of warm water and lower himself into it, and then, he would scream as he was covered from head to toe in gunk. Ned dropped Jemima's book in shock. Thunk! The girl stirred. Ned held his breath. Then she turned over and went back to sleep. Zzz. Taking great care, the boy rolled himself back out of Jemima's bedroom. He had to reverse his wheelchair, as with the mountains of jars, there wasn't room to turn round. Trundle, trundle, trundle. Then, disaster. Clunk, clink, clank. The footrest on his wheelchair just clipped one of the jars on the floor. There must have been 50 jars stacked on top of it. Ned reached out, but he was too late. The skyscraper of jars began toppling over. Tipple, topple, topple. The jar at the top was heading straight for Jemima's head. As it fell through the air, it was as if time sped up and slowed down all at once. Snatch! Ned caught the jar just as it was a millimetre from thunking the head of his sister. As much as he may have wanted to see his sister thunked in the head with a jar of gumblanosh, whatever that was, sadly, now was not the time. It would spoil his surprise. Because just at that moment, an idea came to him. Ding! An idea so simple it was brilliant. Simply brilliant and brilliantly simple, Brimple. Ned would turn the tables on Jemima. The girl had a bath every single morning apart from Ned's birthday. So Ned would do exactly what his sister was going to do to him. She would suffer the bath of doom herself. Ned silently collected up all the jars of gunk in the house and brought them to the bathroom. Once safely inside, Ned locked the door. Click! He didn't want Jemima bursting in on him before her bath of doom was ready. Ha ha, chuckled the boy to himself. Outside it was still dark, but dawn was breaking and the birds were bursting into song. Tweet, tweet, tweet. One by one, he opened the jars of gunk and poured them into the bath. Splish, splash, splosh. There was brown gunk, yellow gunk, thick gunk, thin gunk, black gunk, bubbly gunk, chopped gunk, fizzy gunk, purple gunk, and cold gunk. Every kind of gunk you could imagine, gallons and gallons of gunk. Eventually, the bath was full. After what seemed like hours of fetching, carrying, and unscrewing, the boy was exhausted. Catching his breath, Ned didn't notice what was happening right behind him. Gurgle, whatever was in that bath was coming to life.